Hi there. How are you? All right, so let's start the meeting. Can't
Good.
just hang around and wait. Anyway, my name's John Mudda. You guys know me. These folks anyway. So I'm the chair of this meeting, and today we're here to uh, talk about the city of Yes. Just a few introductory things. We If you have anything specifically you'd like to put on the agenda, please email it ahead of time. We'd love to explore it. Anything that's connected to health and housing is always good. Uh, Molly's coming in. Okay, Luana is here. Okay. So we're here, we're looking for ideas, resources to identify the problem and solutions to the homeless and housing crisis. And the prior meeting, the policy meeting, we've put that on hold until we latch on to something and want to work on something. Hi, Molly. We're just getting started. We're a little light today, but we're glad to have you. Some council highlights. I'm just going over the agenda right now. The council highlights we're got a little tweaking on the web, but it's looking pretty good. Farms, we're going to be looking to pull together some marketing materials. We're going to be marketing our tables, our stand in here in Midtown with our urban farm. What we've been doing is going upstate, farming a bit. We've been catching some overflows from another farmer, and we've been growing some stuff here in Midtown on 53rd Street. And we've been giving it to our partners Encore, Hell's Kitchen Cupboard, Main Chance, homeless shelters, elderly centers, and straight to the small tenant people living in small tenants. This coming year, we're going to bring one of our farmers into like a stand here in Midtown, and hopefully we can get people come by and buy the product. And instead of going collecting their overflows, we'll have it right there. As soon as they're finished for the day, they'll give us their overflows, and we can distribute it out to our network, which would save us a lot of labor. We'll still latch on to other farmers and expand our farming initiative. We have some money. We're looking for another 8,000. I think we're looking good for this year. We just applied for a grant. I'll Yeah, I applied for a grant, but we need people to vote on this. That's what I found out late. So we have until Friday, and I'll give you that information. I'll be sending that out in the mail, and maybe I'll put it in chat too as well. Um, but we need your vote. We 75,000 could go a long way. Um, that's it on our farms. I need board members, committee members. We're working on health. We have a health committee going. We have our finance, funding, and management committee going. We have a housing initiative going. They're pulling together quite nicely. So we need, if you guys want to be involved in some of these committees, let me know. And board members too. I'm looking for board members. Um, Special introductions. Do we have anybody that have, are anyone new here that want to introduce yourselves? Anyone? Molly?
Yeah, I'm new. Sorry, I'm like losing my voice. But hi, I'm Molly. I work for a nonprofit in a rapid rehousing program. So I thought this could be really interesting to cross collaborate and work together. My clients are all, sorry, survivors of DV and trafficking. And I don't know if y'all know rapid rehousing, but it's a pretty small program funded by HUD, and they kind of distribute the money to different organizations. Um, so I work for one org, and then I work with maybe like seven or so different orgs in the city. So it's been really fun to, so sorry, to collaborate with different folks and hear more about housing in the city.
That's terrific. So you're a new organization, did you say?
No, the program's relatively new. It's like 5 years, but I work for Sanctuary for Families. It's a pretty old org. We're like based in Financial District, and we have
Okay,
shelters in every borough around.
cool. How many units do you have? How many spaces? How many spaces do you need to fill?
So we don't have, well, we have a supportive housing shelter and we have five, or I think three crisis shelters, but I don't work for the shelters. My program is more, it's kind of like Section 8 or voucher program. We have 30, well, up to 30 folks on of our clients can be in rapid rehousing. Right now we have 18. We are expanding our team right now. But so I'm a housing navigator. So I'm a liaison between property owners and management companies who are willing to house our clients. And we pay
Oh,
like a portion of the rent and then the move-in fees, like broker's fee for a little
yeah.
bit longer and all that.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I have a person who's got a voucher issue, just haven't been able to move that along. Can I connect you?
Unfortunately not. We just work with our clients, but
Yeah.
it's tough. I can forward you a broker that if it's a Section 8 or HASA.
Section 8. Yeah,
I can
section.
forward you a broker that I work with. Um, I'd be happy to do that, but I won't be able to help with their move-in.
Okay. No, it's good to have you within the network. If you want to come by and do a whole presentation, take some more time and talk to everybody about what you're doing. Everybody put their affiliate in if they would, next to the name. That would be good. What's the name of your organization?
It's called Sanctuary for Families.
It's Sanctuary for Families. Good. Okay, you can put your information in chat too,
Sure.
and then yeah, great, super. We have a street sheets need to be updated. I'll make sure I'll get you in there. We got have a lot of resources in there. Um, yeah, loved the connection. Very good. So, anybody else new? Anybody else that want to say hello to us? Um, because we're going to go ahead and move on. Luana, good to see you. Your email's been bouncing back. I don't know if you know that. Have you been getting our emails?
Yeah, I had to clean up my emails. I'm getting so much that it
Yeah.
overflowed and it's not receiving. So I
Yeah.
got some I'm still deleting. So if it
Okay.
bounces back, it'll get to me eventually.
Okay, cool. Are you going to be with us downtown at our action or meeting too with
On
Butch?
Friday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't seen you in the meetings. I was just worried, just want to confirm. Okay, so yeah, the plan is we're having an action on Friday, the 10th. We're going to meet with Botcher with a group of people, 10. Um, just let Pete in. So the plan is here. I'll put it up for everybody. Uh, so let's see your email announcements. Okay, so we're having a group of people, these folks here, they represent coalitions. We have Mariana from the New York City Organization of Public Service Retirees, and we have PNHP represented. And a lot of these folks, we're going to meet with Eric Botcher. Um, we're going to try to sway him to sign on to Bill 1096. And and then we're going to come down to a press rally and we're going to talk about what transpired in the meeting. Then we're going to talk about the bill. We're going to talk about how important it is. Uh, we're going to talk about our health crisis and the mayor's attack on the retirees. This bill will protect the mayor. They've been in court. The retirees and the mayor's been in court about 11 times. And he's bent on pushing the retirees into an advantage plan. That's a corporate plan, basically. They right now they have traditional Medicare. Um, and I think we all know what happens when a corporate gets a hold of our healthcare. They have a good hold on it now. They make a lot of profits, and we end up fighting with them to pay for our care. Um, the same thing with housing, basically, and everything else. So after that, we're going to visit two other council districts, and that'll be announced at the press conference. So if you are around, if you have the time, this would be a great thing to get together and support. And that's the press release is here on the web. The bill information you can access to the agenda. I'll put the agenda in the chat because I missed it on the link on the mail out, and I'm sorry I did that. Um, but that's all I have on the bill. Any questions on that?
Um, John, I can jump in just briefly about that because I'm slightly involved in the whole.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, I
Paul.
just I want everybody to understand, and I'll put my video back on when we start with the city of yes. But um, I'm I want everybody to understand that the progenitor of this was de Blasio. It was not the mayor. And de Blasio cut a deal with the unions. And what he did was he created the plan was to create a massive slush fund for the UFT and other city unions in exchange for them giving up their retirees having Medicare and switching them to Medicare Advantage. So Adams ran on opposing this. And as soon as he got into office, he flipped and said, oh no, we have to get rid of this. So this is actually, it was a $500 million slush fund, $100 million going to each of 5 unions, and the UFT was at the front of this. And it's affecting over 250,000 retirees, including full disclosure, my parents. So that's why I'm saying, and I've spoken to Marianne, she's fantastic. And I'm glad she's rallying with you about this. The biggest issue with the bill, and this is why it hasn't gone anywhere, is that because the city is in constant litigation over this, the council leadership is not interested in passing the bill. They want to wait until the litigation is over. That's their excuse anyway. So I'm just throwing it out there that this is a little more, it's not just, the mayor wants to take this away. This was collusion between the mayor and the top unions in the city of New York to destroy Medicare for retirees. Now, as I said to people, I ran for council in 2023 in my district. And what I said to people was, look, if current employees want to negotiate a new contract and new healthcare discussions, I mean, I'm in favor of Medicare over Medicare Advantage in general, but if current employees wanted to negotiate that and say, okay, from now on, new hires aren't going to get Medicare, they're going to get Medicare Advantage, that's one thing. But to retroactively take it away from 250,000 retirees is insanity. And these are the people who need it the most, and they're the ones who paid into the program with their taxes and everything else. So it's just outrageous. The whole thing is outrageous. And as I said, the unions are just as much to blame for this as the mayor is. And again, for him to betray people who he said, oh no, I agree with you, I'm not gonna, but then again, look at our mayor. So, that's all I need to say about that. So anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there.
No, that's great, Paul. And you have your fingers into a lot of different things. I appreciate that add-on. And they actually, the recent lawsuit, they won, and that's the
They
argument.
won every lawsuit.
Yes, exactly.
Every single lawsuit because they are in the right.
Yeah, exactly. Paul's right about 11 times they've been to court, and that was the excuse for not signing on. Well, let's wait to the courts, and originally this was a Charles Barron bill, and Barron was pushing this. He had other people signed on, and what happened was the health insurers backed his opponent and booted him out of office, basically. So we're not sure where the folks are on it, all the council people, they're hesitant to sign on to it, whether they that's a fear or whatever. But anyway, we need to support Chris Marte. Marte sponsored this bill, and we need to support them and the co-signers, and we need to push all the council folks to sign on. Basically, that's going forward. That's our plan. We're going to hit a couple of people this weekend, and then next weekend we're going to hit some other council people, and we're going to keep marching forward until we have a large uh, group of council people that will sign on, that are signed on. So I appreciate that. Any other questions on that? Any other? Okay, cool. All right. So we're going to uh, talk about the city of Yes. I think everybody knows a little bit about what's going on. Paul is here to talk about it. See, the council voted for the city of Yes, and just like city of Yes, it's basically opening up the doors for the developers to come in and ravage our city. And they want to demolish NYCHA. Um, they want to they planted some developer-friendly folks on the community boards. Our representative is nearly nil. And I think what we have to do is really form some strong strategies and a way forward. And hopefully, Paul will give us some ideas. And he's doing a lot on this issue. He's doing amazing work on this, and I appreciate you being here, Paul. Why don't you go ahead and take it away and introduce you and your nonprofit and take it from here.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks for having me come back. Paul Graziano, Save One Family New York. You know, we have a huge coalition, and it's Save One Family is really just an ad hoc organization, but we have many civic, homeowner, and other organizations as well as individuals who are involved in this. But our current number, I think we're at 220 organizations that are part of our coalition at this point. So it's pretty big, and it's across the city. It's you know, every possible group that you can think of is involved, which is great. So yeah, let me kind of give you a brief discussion. So the council voted for it, and it was put into law on December 18th. So that's 2 weeks ago. Wait, December 18th, 3 weeks ago. It came into being on December 18th. The council modified the original version, but the modifications are minimal. They are very small. You know, dancing around the edges is like what I like to say. I think my comment to the press has been, well, instead of getting shot by 6 bullets, you're getting shot by 5. You know, you're still going to die on the operating table, right? And that's the point, is that the council did this to say, look, we changed it and we made it much better. And we got that $5 billion, that imaginary $5 billion, which I'll briefly talk about. You know, now it's going to be great, and we fixed it, and that's why we're voting for it. And they voted for something that's going to be truly terrible for the entire city. Like you said, it's a apocalyptic, I've said it many times, apocalyptic situation for us. Along with the fact that there are other moving parts that are not necessarily part of the city of Yes, but they're directly related to the city of Yes. And I'll mention those as we're talking today briefly. So when I saw what the vote was going to be on December 7th, December 5th, excuse me, which was the subcommittee, zoning subcommittee, and the land use committee, if you might remember, the vote was delayed for 7 hours. That has never happened before. And that was because they didn't have the votes and they were buying people off at the last minute. So the ultimate outcome of that, as soon as I saw that that had passed, I had a pretty good suspicion that they were going to find the votes to make it happen. So, and that's exactly what happened. So we had a very strong turnout in opposition. I mean, we had 20 out of 51. We needed 6 more votes to kill it. But they bought off those people who said, I'm an absolute no, and then they got what they wanted and they became a yes. So that's exactly what happened. So we immediately were already talking about, well, if this passes, we have to be ready because we want to stop this before permits start to get filed, right? We want to stop this before there's a situation where developers are already filing for permits and pushing to get what they want. So we started interviewing lawyers. We started getting everything ready to start fundraising. And lo and behold, we do have a lawyer. Some of you are going to be familiar with his name, Jack Lester. So Jack is been around for a long time. He's been the lead lawyer on congestion pricing. He's also, some of you may know about the NoHo Soho rezoning that was recently invalidated, which is a very, very, very big deal. He was the lawyer for that case, and he's done many, many other cases. I worked with him a number of years ago on a case in Queens. And basically we have retained him. We started fundraising, and our goal is to raise about $250,000 to make sure that we have enough money in place to make it all the way through the appeals process, because that's where this is going to go. We're also not only focusing on doing one lawsuit, we're focusing on doing multiple lawsuits at the federal and the state level. The state level will be an Article 78, which is the legal lawsuit against the city for arbitrary and capricious decision-making, which we certainly believe the city of Yes is as arbitrary and capricious as it gets. And I can go into a few details about that. The federal case, at least one federal case, will be focusing on civil rights, particularly of communities of color, and particularly in Southeast Queens and Southeast Brooklyn, where you have areas that are already having environmental issues without changes to the zoning, and this is just going to exacerbate that. The mayor said after the city council land use and zoning subcommittee voted on this, he had a town hall meeting in Jamaica 1 hour later, which was staged. I mean, the whole thing was set up for after the vote, and he went on to say that the city of Yes will cure racism, and now Black people will be able to move into white people's neighborhoods. So this is the kind of insanity that we're dealing with here, and of course nobody bought this. And beyond that, it's a completely ridiculous argument or statement to make. But of course, again, expecting this from this mayor and from this administration. Maria Torres Springer said something similar in one of her rallies with the phony advocates, saying, well, a few well-housed people shouldn't stop housing from being built for affordable housing and all of this stuff. Meanwhile, my response to her on Twitter was, yes, well-housed people like Maria Torres Springer, who lives in a $3.1 million co-op in the Park Slope Historic District, which will not be affected by this. Right.
I saw that.
Yes, I mean, the hypocrisy is just off the charts, and but that's part of the fun, I guess. That's part of the whole lawsuit, is that, again, this entire thing isn't just deficient in terms of what it does or what the environmental impact statement says that they are supposed to do. It's fraudulent. It is absolutely fraudulent, and we are prepared to bring that forward. So in that respect, we've already raised, we already have on hand over 50,000, which is great, in about 3 weeks. And we have pledges for about another 30,000, and we're continuing to fundraise, obviously on a daily basis. Of course, any group or individual who'd like to fundraise, we have a GoFundMe page. Most of our funding has come from civic organizations and homeowner organizations who have kicked in, 5,000, 2,000, 1,000, whatever they can afford. We have some individuals who've done that as well, but the GoFundMe is easier. Some people, can donate by check. And if you just type in on Google, GoFundMe, City of Yes, it should come right up. It says, support our fight against New York's NYC City of Yes rezoning. On the GoFundMe, we've raised 12,000. As I said, we have another 40,000 on hand from civic groups. We're continuing to fundraise throughout mostly throughout the four boroughs, because unfortunately, and this is a conversation I've had recently with some Manhattan folks who support us, is that the Manhattan organizations, and I don't count yours among them, but the organizations that you would think would be very active in trying to kill this, are the same organizations who are only interested what happens within the boundaries of their little enclaves. So, you know, I mean, I don't want to start name dropping, but I'm sure you know who I'm talking about to some degree. And it's very disappointing because it's like, well, we only care about what happens within our borders. And this is not something that's happening within their borders. This is happening to every single property in the city of New York. This was an upzoning of every property in the city of New York, and that upzoning was not for affordable housing. And John, just for future reference, when you talk about, you wrote on your thing there on your agenda, and this is no insult or I'm not trying to criticize you, but I just want to say, please put down not housing crisis. We don't have a housing crisis. We have an affordability crisis.
Yeah.
Part of the lie of this entire process is that we have a quote unquote housing crisis. We don't have a housing crisis. We have an affordability crisis. We don't need more units in the city of New York. We need more affordable units. And it's a very specific distinction, and not affordable the way they define affordable. Affordable, not fake affordable, city designated affordable, right? So
You're absolutely right. Yeah.
Please, moving forward in your meetings, again, it's your meeting, so do what you want, but I just want to throw that out there, that just feeds into their narrative. And
No,
their
I get you, Paul. I really get you on that. And it's being restricted, and the market's being controlled, and that's why we don't have the housing too. There's a lot of that going. I get you, and I understand words are very important.
Yeah.
But
Yep. So anyway, you know, so what we're doing, like I said, is we're planning to file by the end of January, beginning of February, and we're doing it in multiple venues and in multiple levels, and really pushing to make this happen. I mean, I think we have you know, it's always hard to fight through an Article 78 process. However, like I said, we're approaching this from multiple directions, and we do believe that the environmental impact statement is just so, there were so many red flags in it. And again, I'm someone who looks at EISs all the time. And you may have heard of a guy named George Janes. He's another person who is, he's a planner who actually works for a number of the community boards in Manhattan, but he's appalled by all of this. And he's going to be one of the experts along with me. We have a number of experts. We have a number of lawyers who are going to be working pro bono with Jack Lester to try to reverse this situation. And we have some other unorthodox ideas that are percolating at the moment, and it's a matter of raising funds. But if we can do that, that will also be coming to the fore. But I'll keep those in reserve for the moment. So, you know, I will throw out there, you know, I can give you some examples of what this is going to do for communities if you need me to.
please.
I tend to focus on the lower density communities, where George focuses on the higher density communities. So he represents a lot of the communities in Manhattan in terms of community boards, et cetera. I'm dealing more with areas in Queens and Brooklyn and the Bronx and Staten Island. But, you know, if there are questions or comments or anybody wants some examples, I'm happy to throw that out there.
No, go right ahead, Paul.
Sure. Okay. You know, one of the examples that I've used recently is there are areas out in Queens and Brooklyn and Staten Island which are particularly vulnerable because they are on the ocean, right? Or they're on the South Shore of Queens and Brooklyn. You know, our geology is very, very different than Manhattan or parts of the Bronx. We don't have bedrock. Our bedrock is 300 feet below sea level. We have what's called a terminal moraine. We sit on sand and soil and not much else, and some glacial boulders. The South Shore, for those of you who are not familiar with this, the South Shore of Brooklyn, well, actually most of Brooklyn and half of Queens is what's called an outwash plain. And this is where the glaciers came down basically and formed a ridge. If you ever drive out to Nassau County, you're on the Grand Central Parkway in Eastern Queens. You're about 100 and something feet above the rest of the South. You can see all the way to the ocean from there, even though it's about 8 miles away. And everything south of there is complete. It's pancake flat. That's why there's places called flatlands in Brooklyn, specifically because of that. So then it goes into Jamaica Bay, and then on the other side of that is the Rockaway Peninsula and Coney, what was an island, Coney Island, which is now a peninsula. And these are barrier islands, right? So we all know that during Hurricane Sandy and Ida and other major events, these areas have been destroyed. I mean, absolutely devastated. 9-foot, 12-foot waves and tidal surges. In Ida, we had people dying in basements all over the place in Queens, basements and cellars that should never have people in them, which is why we've been arguing against them in terms of legalizing ADUs, right? So more or less, you have huge portions of these boroughs that are very much in danger from any kind of increased development in them. In addition, sea level rise combined with subsiding of land. Now, people don't seem to understand that. There was a big article that came out a year ago or so that showed how the land is sinking throughout the city, partially based upon the weight of the buildings that we're building, right? So, I mean, where I live 52 feet above sea level in Queens. And I can tell you that over the last 20 years, it has become noticeable as they've repaved my street maybe 3 or 4 times that the street is getting higher. And now the curbs are actually at or sometimes below the street level, the curbs that they put in 100 years ago, right? So my curb, which used to be yay high, is now like this, or in some cases like this. Now, that should tell you something, that they have to keep the street level at the same level because all of the pipes underground are at a certain level for the sewers and everything else. That's happening all over the city. You have what's called daytime flooding going on a regular basis on the South Shore. People had no idea what it was, and it's the tide coming in during bright sunny days, causing 18 inches or 2 feet of flooding on the streets and into people's basements and cellars. Then you get, obviously, storms. So, as I said, we have very different land and hydrology here than places in other parts of the city. One of the places, and I give this as an example, is Bell Harbor and Neponset in the Rockaways. Bell Harbor and Neponset is in the western part of the Rockaway Peninsula. It's 2 small communities of single-family homes. The changes in the zoning will now allow these properties to be redeveloped, right? And encourage them to be redeveloped. And we're talking about in Bell Harbor, for example, there are 1,300 properties. Before this, 60 of them could have been subdivided legally. So you'd replace one house with 2 single-family homes. Now, 520 of these properties, 520 out of 1,300 can be subdivided. And each of those properties can have 2 units. So you're talking about replacing 1 unit with 4 units. And, for people in Manhattan, that may not be a big deal, but you have to look at the scale of everything. This is a massive increase in population and development. And they've also increased the lot coverage of all buildings as of right. So the FAR has been increased, the yards have been removed, the lot coverage has been increased, and the permitted obstructions have been increased. So now most lots will be able to have between 80 and 100% of the lot covered, okay? We need these green spaces to be uncovered because this is what absorbs water, okay? All the engineering in the world is not going to absorb this water. It doesn't matter how many drains you put in the street or how many sewer lines you put in. If your sewers cannot Our sewers in the city can deal with a quarter of an inch of rain an hour. Anything above that, we have huge problems. You see that with the billions of gallons of sewage that gets dumped into the Hudson River and into the East River. That's directly because of the substandard situation that we have. So any amount of increased impermeability is going to exacerbate that, right? Any amount of additional people moving into a fragile barrier island or into the South Shore or into other parts of the city that are vulnerable are going to have the same problem. So here's the key. The key is in their environmental impact statement, the city said, we're going to do a generic action because it's going to affect every single property in the city. And therefore, we can't determine where the development will be. We can't determine how much development will occur. Okay, so we're only going to study 28 properties in 18 neighborhoods to determine how we're going to do this rezoning. So understand, how many neighborhoods are there in the city of New York? 500, let's say. How many properties are zoned residential? 313,000 properties, and they chose 28. That is 1/9,000th of 1% of the properties in New York City to show what the outcomes are going to be. So first they say, we can't study it, we can't possibly analyze it, so we can't figure out what the outcomes are going to be. And then their response is, by the way, there aren't going to be any negative results. There's not going to be any water and sewer infrastructure needed. There's not going to be any changes to neighborhood character. There's not going to be any socioeconomic conditions occurring. There's not going to be any change to land use policy. This is what's in the EIS. This is a fraudulent document that the entire process was built upon. So that just gives you a very brief example of what we're dealing with here.
Yeah. Yeah. Not to mention the overheating, you take away these green spaces and these
Yeah.
in the building this it's a very superficial uh, uh, it's a very superficial proposal, no question, and it's written by your developer, and through the hearings we had, what stood out to me, Paul, was uh, no study on the infrastructure. And when it was proposed, when it says talked about the infrastructure, it was almost as if, okay, it's going to be left for those little municipal areas to deal with. They had uh, no answers for them. Am I right?
Yes. Well, again, that's why the council members who voted yes because of the quote unquote $5 billion. Well, 2 billion of that is supposed to be for infrastructure, but there's no guarantee that that money actually exists. It's not money that's in a bank account that they're tapping. This is $5 billion that they're going to have to raise through more taxes and through more budgetary flammery, right? But here's the best part. If we go into a budget crisis, they can just remove that money altogether. There's no guarantee that that money is going to be actually happening. And $2 billion of it is supposed to be for infrastructure, $2 billion for affordable housing, and $1 billion for hiring. However, remember, our budget for 1 year in New York City last year was $108 billion. $5 billion is a literal drop. It's not a drop in the bucket. It's a drop in the ocean, right? We are 30, 40, 50 years behind our infrastructure needs today. Just imagine if the city of Yes continues, what is this $2 billion over 5 years going to do? Nothing. Yeah. So the idea that council members who represent these areas, these very vulnerable areas, voted in favor of this city of Yes because they got their little things that they wanted, and are now going on a tour. Just to let you know, this is Selvina Brooks Powers, Natasha Williams, the speaker herself, right? Going on a tour talking about all the things they did to protect their neighborhoods. What they did, as I said at the beginning, was you're not getting shot by 6 bullets, you're only getting shot by 5.
Yeah.
That's the good work that we did. We did that. City Limits came out with a piece yesterday that was actually written by someone from the Furman Center, who is, Vicky Bean's person. And the Furman Center have been driving the city of Yes. They're one of the drivers of this. Okay. They're more than just in favor of it. They've been, pushing this very hard. And this article is worth a read because not only is it wildly inaccurate, it's great to see what the council members are saying publicly. It's great to see what they're saying about what great work they did to protect their communities when they did a lot. We call this greenwashing in the business. This is just them saying, look at what we did, but it's very, very bad. It's not a good situation. I have to leave in a few minutes, but if there are any questions, comments.
Yeah. Lester, this fellow Lester, your legal.
Jack Lester.
Uh-huh. Okay, tell us about him, if you would.
He's been around for a long time. He's one of the few lawyers who works with communities. He's reasonable. He's not charging $1,200 an hour, which is helpful. And he's been successful in a lot of suits. Again, the big suit that he just won 2 weeks ago was the NoHo Soho rezoning, which was the last rezoning that de Blasio pushed through before he left office. And the NoHo Soho rezoning was not only to increase development in Soho and NoHo to begin with, but to create, quote unquote, an artists fund. And the artists fund would be generated by the mandatory conversion of the remaining artists' lofts. Because with Soho and NoHo, that they have these artist lofts that artists moved into 40, 50 years ago. And they have a very specific designation, which protects them to some degree. So they were going to force every one of these lofts to convert to residential and charge each of them over $1 million. And this would go into an artist slush fund solely controlled by the mayor. Okay, this was under de Blasio. So they went to court and he won 2 weeks ago. And in fact, he went all the way to the top courts. The judges called it government extortion, which is a wild response from the judges, that this is official government extortion, extorting money from people, forcing them to do this, and then creating a slush fund specifically controlled by the mayor. So that was literally, not only was the slush fund overturned, but the entire rezoning was overturned, which is excellent in my opinion. So that just happened 2 weeks ago. As I said, he's been the lead lawyer on congestion pricing, which, again, for those, I don't know how folks in Manhattan feel about it, but a lot of people, particularly where I live, find it to be very disturbing. It's just another tax. Why don't you crack down on the $500 million in money that people are cheating the MTA before you start taxing people, right? So he has been the lawyer there. He filed multiple lawsuits. There are still, the press is not really telling the truth here. The New Jersey case is not dead. It's actually going to be, heard in another week, I believe. And there's still 2 cases in Nassau County. And if those cases go, and that's going to be heard on January 16th. And if those cases, if they get a preliminary injunction from that judge, it actually will shut down congestion pricing immediately. So there's a lot of balls still in the air here that people, the way that the media looks at it and gives a very simple answer to a complicated situation, which is typical. So that's Jack. And like I said, he thinks outside the box. He's willing to listen to a lot of different points of view. He doesn't have a massive ego, and he's a pretty good litigator.
Cool. All right. Questions, folks? Questions? I know you have some.
I have a question, John.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Paul. That was it's so intense, and you're so knowledgeable. So thank you for all that information. It's really scary what's happening in this city today. Without going into depth about the lawsuit, is the lawsuit specific to these 28 neighborhoods,
No.
properties and 18?
No.
Is it specific to environmental concerns?
No.
Okay,
It's specific as I said, we're coming at this from multiple angles. The idea
okay,
is we're not just going to focus on the EIS. We're not just going to focus. We're focusing on, again, communities of color. We're focusing on direct environmental issues. We're focusing, if we had the ability to file a criminal fraud case, we would do that. You know, I mean, we don't have the ability to do that as a civil direction, but we're doing it from whatever angle we can. Another thing is the Green Amendment. Is anybody familiar with the Green Amendment?
okay,
The Green Amendment was passed at the state level 2 years ago, and it's supposed to guarantee all people in the state of New York clean air and clean water. And it is very, very untested because it's brand new. There's only been like 2 cases brought forward. So we're going to be approaching it from that as well. That's why I said I was giving those examples that the city's own studies were incredibly deficient, right? The 28 properties that they studied to determine the outcome for 313,000 properties.
gotcha, okay,
Ridiculous.
okay.
It's just
I got
ridiculous. It's,
I
so no, we're saying their studies are garbage, and therefore this entire thing should be thrown out because there's no when you do studies and reports, and again, I do this for a living, you have to have a basis in reality. And a lot of these EISs are junk to begin with, but this one takes the cake. This one is, as I said, we're sort of in uncharted waters here. No one has ever tried to overturn an entire zoning regime before. So it's not just, again, it's not just the NoHo Soho rezoning. It's not just one little area we're talking about. It's the whole city.
Right.
And we believe we have some pretty good ammunition to work with here. And we'll see how it goes. I mean, we're also talking about what's the venue that's most likely to be helpful in terms of judges, because it's hard to go to a judge in Manhattan and talk about stuff that's happening in Queens, to be honest with you. When people brought up, elected officials brought up at the hearings, telling Dan Garodnick, a 5-story apartment building replacing a 1-family home in Queens is devastating to us. That's a high rise. And he looked at this council person blankly and said, I don't understand what you're talking about. A 5-story building isn't a high rise. It's a low rise building in Manhattan and in Brooklyn and blah, blah, blah. And she said, yes, but we're not in Manhattan. We're not in Brooklyn. We're in the suburbs of Queens here, and replacing a 1-unit single family home with a 5-story building with 40 units in it is a massive change to the character of our area and changes everything, right? So it's, again, that the people who are hearing these cases in Manhattan, many of them have the same attitude. Well, what's the problem? What do you mean they're taking away 10 feet of your property, that, your minimum lot size? Who cares about 10 feet? However, judges in Queens, or judges in Staten Island in particular, are going to be much more understanding of those arguments. Now, we're also going to be talking about, for example, the phoniness about affordability, right? Affordability is going to be a huge part of our lawsuit. And there we're going to be focusing heavily more on Manhattan and Brooklyn. And that may be part of the case that ends up going into those courts.
So with all of that being said, there's so much to cover, and the time period for which you have to file is within 4 months after.
For the Article 78,
Right,
yes.
right,
Yes.
right.
So as I said, so that would be April.
Okay.
So we're aiming to file like by the end of this month or beginning of February. So another 4 to 5 weeks.
Mhm.
But we just have the problem with the Article 78 is that, people think of trials as, judge, we have new information that's come in. It doesn't work that way within Article 78. You have to front load everything. So you bring,
That's what I was saying. You have a lot to cover.
We have a lot to cover, and we have to
time.
Correct. So the good news is, and Jack brought this to my attention, that once we give it in, we do have another 20 days to amend the action. So we can bring in additional information in those first 20 days. But once those 20 days are over, it's done.
Do you feel like, what other things do you feel like, can you let us in on that Article 78? Maybe we can help fill it in, and maybe there's someone will think about something.
Every organization and individual that wants to help out, we will gladly take your donations, and B, we will gladly take your help on any aspect of this. And as I said, that's why we're not just focusing on one thing. We're focusing on affordability. George Janes brought up to me that, for example, in the scope of work, we were talking about this yesterday, they came up with this new plan for towers and bases, right? So again, this is a very Manhattan-oriented and let's say downtown Brooklyn-oriented piece of this. New rules for towers and bases. Well, when the City Planning Commission came out with the actual text amendment in April, it was completely different, totally different. And what you need to understand is that the process, and this is a process issue, when you come up with a scope of work, when you come up with something that says, okay, this is the box that we have that we're working in, you have to stay in the box. You can't go over here. You can't go over here or up here. And they did that. So on grounds of process alone, that should be a huge red flag, right? As I explained, when you're rezoning a property in Queens from R2 to R7, that's the scope. You can't do an R1 and you can't do an R8. It has to be within R2 and R7. That's what they did. They took the scope. It was supposed to be in this box and they went over here. So we have numerous examples of this, and that's a really good one that, again, George is an expert on that end of it. So that's going to be very helpful from his perspective. So any help you guys want to give, we're willing to take it.
Yeah, I'm thinking we really have to bring this out to, we have to educate. Maybe some forums would be a good idea, tied into a series of forums. That's one action I'm thinking. We have some lawyers within our network that can kind of scope it out for us too, and maybe we can add something. I'm sure someone can add something to it. There's too many minds out there, and if we kind of focus people onto this issue, I'm sure we can help in some way. I'm all in with you, Paul. I think what you're doing is a tremendous. You know, I love your work. I really do. You've been at this, and you're passionate about it, and this is really affects us all because what's happening, we're having our economy implode in front of our eyes. We're done, basically. We've been stripped down. They're stripping us down from healthcare to housing. And it's unfathomable to me that they talk about housing, the need for housing, and this is the answer when they're looking to demolish two properties in NYCHA complex, Elliott, Chelsea, and Fulton House. They're
Yep.
looking to demolish, and if you walk through that area, you can understand why they want that area. They
Oh,
want to,
they want the land.
yeah,
That's Listen, this is all about real estate. It has nothing to do about housing. It's about, you said it at the beginning. This was all written by, and I know I've mentioned this at previous meetings. It's all about the Blast Committee. The Blast Committee was put together by Adams. It was his friends and donors from the real estate industry and the construction industry. They came up with the City of Yes. They came up with the Green Fast Track. Green Fast Track was approved 6 months ago with no input from the City Council. It was a rules change by City Planning to take away environmental review from small projects. You know what small projects are? 175 units or less. It's outrageous. 175 units or less. Here's another one, Intro 1107. That is coming forward right now. If you guys don't know about Intro 1107, you should. You should. This was introduced during the City of Yes, November 13th. Intro 1107, this dovetails with everything here, will allow Airbnb specifically to do short-term stays in 1- and 2-family homes without owners being there. Now, we had the laws changed 3 years ago. I think it's local law 18, which is it has to be long-term stays. They have to register with the city, and the owner has to, thank you, local law 18, and the owner has to be there. It's a home share. No one's against a home share. This is going to allow the hedge funds and the speculators to buy these properties and turn them into short-term short stay hotels in perpetuity. And they also want to change the definition to allow up to 4 rooms to be rented out per unit. 4 rooms per unit. This is in direct opposition to the quote unquote directives of the City of Yes, the supposed directives of the City of Yes. And yet the same people who voted for the City of Yes are sponsoring this bill. What changed? Including Adrienne Adams. What changed? Adrienne Adams killed this bill 2 years in a row. This year she co-sponsored it. Do you know who the new chief legal officer of Airbnb is? Ron Klain. Do you know who Ron Klain is? He was Joe Biden's chief of staff until he became the chief legal officer for Airbnb this year, well, beginning of 2024.
That's fascinating.
It's disturbing.
Yeah.
So all these
Tom
people,
Kaler.
the city council is making so many moves against our city. It's incredible.
Incredible.
Yeah. Tom Kaler, our board member, actually worked on that the Airbnb bill. He was pushing it all the way. He was
Oh, the
phenomenal.
local law 18 you're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. And then we were down there at the rally trying to stop this intro you were talking about. So what we're seeing here is you got your developers, you got your health insurance company. They want everything. They want to strip us down, and they're looking for ways to get there. And all these little laws and so forth they put forth is very damaging. And we don't do enough research, or it's our politicians don't do enough research, or they're not protecting us, and we have to kind of coalesce.
I think we also have to use the discrimination against people of color and the income disparity that's in New York as well, and add to that, because most of this change and this gentrification and so on and so forth is happening with low and moderate income people and people of color in most of those neighborhoods. That's where the primary target is these days. So I like that you added that into your part of the conversation.
It's critical. It's critical to the conversation. Critical.
Very critical.
Yeah.
One of the other things I was asking, so if you formulate your lawsuit and you file it, is there a particular thing that they can extract and take out and just consider certain points of your lawsuit, or is it in totality? And will it be thrown out based on 1 or 2 factors that they deem unnecessary or
I mean, it
unarguable?
It depends on what the judge does, right? And it's at the discretion of the judge, but usually they're considering. Remember, as I said, we're front loading it. So whatever we give them is what they're going to consider. We can't add additional information beyond the 20 days. So that's why we have to make sure that we have I don't want to say it's not the kitchen sink, but we want to make sure that we hit everything.
The toilet as well.
There you go. The toilet as well. Exactly. Yeah. Because we want to make sure that it's as broad-based, both broad-based and specific. I think that's the key and again, they've given us a lot to work with, I think, as I said, because there's so much wrong with all of this that it's not just one little thing here or one little thing here. There's just, the whole thing is built on a house of lies. I mean, it's crazy. So we do have the ability, I think, to have to, where we're able to do this, but we're going to do what we can do. And certainly, like I said, anybody who wants to participate, we're happy to incorporate you into this.
Are petitions helpful?
I'm sorry.
Are petitions helpful, or have you passed that stage already?
Well, yeah. I mean, we need plaintiffs. Plaintiffs. Yeah, plaintiffs would be helpful. If someone says, I live here and this is how this is going to affect me, and I'm I'm going to be an affected party in this.
But technically, the whole city is an affected party, right?
Right, but for the lawsuit, we need individuals, organizations, and actually elected officials. So we're doing all three.
Okay. Would a group like say public housing folks in public housing, would that be a strong plaintiff?
That'd be fantastic. Yeah. Yeah.
Would just a nonprofit itself?
A nonprofit or, again, I'll tell you, we have over 200 organizations. Most of them are civic and homeowners groups, but we do have Met Council on Housing.
Okay.
We do have the Black Institute. We do have other groups outside of the normal, civic world. And then we have lots of individuals, and we have elected officials. So we have a pretty wide coalition of folks. And yes, if there's other groups who want to join on, we're ready to roll,
Alex, you're here, right? Alex, can you hear me? I wonder if,
Hello?
Hi,
yeah,
Alex.
Alex, I
yeah.
wonder if the housing conservation coordinators, Wesna and Right to Council would come aboard on this.
I have a steering committee meeting at 1 p.m. I'll bring it up.
Great. I thought you would.
If you see the GoFundMe is in your chat box.
Okay.
So Alex, if you need any other reference, and Alex, you have my number, so you can call me
Okay.
if there's any additional info you need.
Thank you so much.
And Andrew, what do you think? I know your services, real services oriented. I don't know how, but I don't know how that would fit in. But can you comment? Possibility?
Sorry, you're speaking to me?
Yes.
What are you asking for in terms of feedback specifically?
No. Looking for people to go sign on the lawsuits of the nonprofits, and you guys. I know you guys have a lot of service-oriented practice, but you do involved in housing. Maybe this is an opportunity for you to jump aboard and sign on to this. You think you could take this back to your bosses and discuss this and maybe have a meeting?
After this meeting, would you be able to just send me an email introduction, just briefly summarizing what we're talking about now so that I can forward it to the appropriate people to have that conversation?
Sure. Yeah. Andrew's with Housing Works. Paul, just to let you know.
Oh, Housing Works. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, was Housing Works part of the Housing for All coalition with NYHC and all that stuff?
Possibly. I'm not entirely sure because I'm not involved with our advocacy and housing department specifically.
My guess is I believe it was. That's why I'm asking you. So I don't think your board is going to want to sign on to the lawsuit, considering they were one of the people who pushed
Supported.
This. Yeah.
Yeah, I was surprised at some of the folks that supported it.
I'm not surprised because many of them, and I'm not saying Housing Works, but many of them receive funding from the city and have long ties with people in the city government, and so it's not a shock.
Well, those folks I wasn't, and that's where a good amount of money comes to the
Absolutely.
nonprofit. Yeah. Anybody else? Anybody have any other questions? Anyone? Anything? Don't feel shy. Nothing's unimportant here. Who's a Zoom user? You should. Could you announce yourself? Zoom user is not a name. If you could, I'll put your affiliate in. Your name. He wants to remain anonymous, I think. Anyway, anybody else? Anything else? Paul, let's any actions, anything else you could ask of us?
I think that's it. We have a very limited amount of time, like I said. So anybody who'd like to get in touch, again, you have my contact information, and I certainly would welcome it. And not just me, but obviously the larger coalition that we have. And like I said, you have the GoFundMe, you have my info. Anybody who's interested in helping out, or if they actually want to be a plaintiff, that's fine too. We're going to have we're going to have dozens of plaintiffs. So it's not that we need plaintiffs, but anybody who would like to be a plaintiff, we certainly are happy to have you on board. Let's put it that way.
Well, you can count me in. And then also these other groups I'm coalescing. Rethink, I'm sure, Rethink and their coalition, the Empire State Coalition that I'm a part of, I'm sure would be interested in that. I'll put you in touch with Sam Turby, and we'll work on some maybe we'll think about doing some presentations to the public, marketing presentations. I think this maybe your lawyers, we'll think about the outline and who we might bring into the discussion and put it out there to the public.
Fantastic.
Okay, thanks, Paul. Thanks for all your
John?
help.
Somebody
Yeah.
has a hand up,
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sadie.
Oh, Sadie, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I didn't.
Hi, good
I'm glad
morning.
you saw that.
I'm a Reese resident, and so I just
You're a Reese resident?
yeah.
Okay.
And I'm not sure if you're familiar with Joel Copperman for the Environmental Justice
Yes,
Initiative.
yes. I've
Yeah, I just texted him. Yeah, so all right, cool. I just let him know.
I've worked with Joel, I don't know, 25 years ago on something. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And he's a
Great.
good guy. Very good guy.
Great. Great. I just let him know that I'm in this meeting. And so he's like, what? He's like, I can't talk right now. I'm like, all right, I'll talk to you later about it. So I have to catch him up. Thanks.
Great.
It's being recorded too. You can always it's on YouTube now live, and then I can always send you the recording too from our Zoom. So
Thank
it,
you.
I usually put it in the next newsletter too. So with that, if no one else has any questions, then we'll move on. Paul, thanks so much for your.
Thank you so much for having
Thank
me
you,
today.
Paul. Thank you.
Very welcome, and to be continued. And when I'm ready for you, John, I'll let you know. And anybody, as I said, anybody else who wants to participate, we'll talk in the next couple of weeks and figure it out.
Yeah, and come on down to the health rally if you have time.
When is that again?
Friday the 10th at 11:15.
I can make it. I will be there.
Okay, thanks, Paul.
Thank you, guys.
All right.
Take care.
Okay. So that was very interesting. That was always like to hear from Paul. Anybody? Okay. So Sadie, I'm glad you're here. You want to? Is this your first time?
No, it's not my first time. I was invited by Alex. I saw you at the summer event that you had.
Oh, right. Yeah. You want to introduce yourself to everybody and tell us a little bit about what you're doing? I know you said something about the Reese House. Are you
Yeah,
advocating?
I'm a resident at Reese. I
Uh,
also volunteer from time to time with RPPH. I'm also a volunteer board of director on Met Council on Housing.
oh,
So I'm
great.
very familiar with a lot of individuals that's here as well. So yeah, I just decided to hop on. I thought it was started at 10, but I didn't know it was 9:30, but I was like, oh God. So I said, let me hurry up and crash the party, so to speak.
No worries. No worries. Glad you're here. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
so
I think you caught most of Paul's presentation. So I think that's the crux of it. So cool. Anything else you want to add, Sadie?
oh no, that's it. It's just that I was trying to figure out what's thing. Sorry, I just cut off my mic. I was trying to figure out like what's going on in terms of who's going to speak, like what are like the plans of action and what to do going forward to get an idea as to what lies ahead. Because a lot is coming. So it's like talking about health insurance to the roof over your head and everything. Every
Oh,
angle
yeah.
getting attacked. So I'm trying to figure out there's so many fires to put out. Like, you see the embers before the actual fire, and it's like, okay, which one do I handle first? So yeah.
Yeah,
So
you're absolutely right. There's a lot of fires, and that's why we all have to come together on it.
thank
If Yeah, I'm going to go back to the agenda. I think we pretty much covered everything. We're actually at 10:45. Any other public concerns? Anybody have any? I saw Renee jump in here.
Yeah, I was gonna say, John, I want to hear from Renee because there was a development and I want to know if she wants to share some of that, and I'm
Good.
so upset and how we can go forward.
Yeah, we've had a discussion about this. Renee, you want to add anything? You want to discuss anything?
The election, LHLC won the election of the president. We were told on Thursday. On Monday, received a notice saying there's a protest. There's an article in the news stating that Darlene Waters has filed a protest. So right now we're waiting to see the outcome of it. This goes to NYCHA Legal.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think we kind of some of us surmise that it's all backed by the related to NYCHA folks. You know, they kind of urged her to file the protest. So it's amazing, right? Um, they want
So,
control all the way down to the ground.
so
Go
my
ahead.
concern is what happens to the election? What's the next step, Renee? Did she leave?
No, I'm still here.
Okay,
Unfortunately, right now, the resident council remains as it is.
right. I saw that.
Yeah. So the next step goes to the NYCHA Legal Department and for them to sort it out. Questions have been asked about this process. What is the exact what was exactly that is the problem
Hmm.
that's seen by Darlene?
Right,
But we only have a news report that she's the one who filed the report and what she said was misinformation. Haven't seen anything in particular, specifics. Haven't seen that at all.
right. Because the Mr. Williams congratulated you on a well-run campaign.
Yeah.
So how could all of a sudden that I mean he himself congratulated you on a well-run professional campaign. So how it's contradictory to what she's saying, right?
Yes. So at this point,
Hmm.
this amazes me. Ah, I don't even know what to say.
Right. Okay. So let's be devil's advocate. If the election is null and void, does that mean that you have to do a new election?
We need
Then
specifics on everything that's going on.
say it
So I
again.
can't. We need specifics on everything that's going on and what's
Okay.
the guidelines. So I
Okay.
can't say yet
Okay.
what would happen.
Okay. Okay. Here we go again. It's a
Right.
never-ending story. Talk about fires and embers, Sadie.
Yeah, right. So, I think it's a little bit of it's not a waiting game. I think we need to kind of jump on it, and I think we are trying to figure that out. So I think certainly legal support would be a good step forward. Um, that's something we're discussing.
Yeah, well, you
Um,
don't even know what you're fighting, so you got to
yeah,
know what the charges are with what you can,
they're probably hunting for them.
huh?
They're probably trying to figure out what, you know, they're probably going to dig in, try and find something, anything to contest it. But that means we'll just have to come out strong and support, and I guess we'll
But
want
the
to discuss it.
person who ran the election said she did a professional, well-run campaign, you know.
Yeah,
So they themselves confirmed that she was professional and well-run. So,
yeah. I think it might be good for us to reach out to for publicity, for news, you know, for some of the writers and to get out there and get in front of it. Maybe I don't know.
I don't
I,
know. We don't know what the argument is. So we need to
exactly.
know what the argument is before you
Yeah,
can do anything.
exactly. Okay.
All right.
Let's kind of wrap this
Put the
up.
article in the chat.
I'm sorry.
I put the article that came out about what went on in the chat.
Okay, great, great. Um, okay, so we'll work with Paul on the City of Yes thing. I think that was a great presentation. Any other public concerns? We're going to kind of wrap this up.
I have
Mike,
a question for you, John.
go ahead, Alex.
When you told Paul that you said I, did you mean John Mudd or MSCC?
MSCC.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I think this is a no-brainer. We've been supporting him for a while. We've kind of fought that issue. We've raised the alarm about the developers on the developer-friendly folks on the community board. I think there's a way. There's got to be a way to wrap all this stuff together. Um, I'm not sure what the answers are, but. There's got to be a way of wrapping all this together. Um, okay, so to wrap up, next month we're going to have Norman Siegel and Damu Radeshwar. I'm butchering her name, I'm sure. She has she's done some studies about the NYCHA operation proposal. She's got something she sent me that's kind of interesting. I haven't really looked at it thoroughly, but Norman's going to be here and Demu. Uh, Norman's going to speak to a different subject, but it kind of ties in. And then Rob, been wanting Rob to talk about the homeless lawsuits. Uh, what they're doing is it's basically penalizing you if you're homeless, uh, and they're making it illegal for you to be on the streets. So I think we need to talk about those three things. Um, and um, I have nothing else to say. I'm just meandering here. Anybody else for last word?
I mean, you said that there's got to be a way to wrap everything together. Well, I mean, part of that is to be really blunt and say the thing that nobody really wants to say is that people aren't, they're just like living their lives, they're stressed out, they're not involved with all of this stuff that we are, and that is like a big problem. They just, if you hit any of them with any of this, they'll be like, what? Huh? I didn't know. Oh my God. Like they're just out of the loop,
Yeah.
living their life.
Yeah, I think that's I have this idea. During this health fight, we have some national folks involved. I've been involved with national folks on healthcare, on some other issues. We're coalescing with Nichelle Carver on the national on the homeless issue, and and we feel like, I mean, the general discussion is that it's very, we've got corporate hands into everything. I mean, we're in serious trouble. Um, but on the ground level, where the councils are, even on the community boards, they're sticking their hands into the community boards. They're trying to manufacture consent by putting people on there and kind of swaying votes, and these community boards sit around and want to negotiate with the developers. These community boards want to feel like they have to find a medium ground. They're supposed to be for the community, and we've got bids, and so I can't really myself, I can't really fathom that, but they do it. And I think what we have to do is go after the council folks. If we can kind of build power with a lot of groups. I mean, we're coalescing on the housing, coalescing on the health, and I think we really have to build that power, that community power, and we have to take back on the ground level at least and build up. Uh, but I think it's really on the ground we can be effective. When they talk about national care and so forth, they've been at this for years, and I'll support them. I'm happy to support them, but I think our fight is on the ground level. You guys agree?
I think you're right, but I agree with Alex. It's just that people are in their certain silos, and if it really doesn't affect people directly, it's hard to get people involved in things, you know. And true, a lot of people don't. They're living their lives and they don't know really what's going on. The ramifications of these laws and changes in the laws that are happening, they're not really aware of the effects these things are going to have on our communities and on our health systems and schools, whatever, so many different things. And we're voting, you know, we're voting for people, or people are voting for people who really don't have their best interest in mind. So I think Alex is right. I really, even when we were fighting with, well, whatever we're fighting, to get people to come out is like pulling teeth. And I think, you know, I don't know how it works, but that is
So,
really very important, because change only comes, you know, when there was real live protests and real protests, whether it was Vietnam, whether it was civil rights, whether it was whatever rights, you know, there were millions of people coming out to fight as one, right? And so
yeah.
we have different agendas and different people, and not, you know, doing different fights, but yet they're the same fight. You know, if I'm making sense.
No,
So
you're
I think, you know, getting people the knowledge and getting them aware and getting them wanting to participate in the fight is where I see a big struggle. So
yeah. But what you're saying is it's really about bringing people together, and then it's also about education, and that's what
right,
you and Alex.
right.
So those things we have to really focus on, gathering people together and education, and that's what we have to find out what's effective. I do have an annual agenda for this year. Doing a little tweaking. We're doing that in our management meetings. By the way, anybody's that wants to come to these meetings, you're more than welcome. But we have management and marketing and finance meeting going on every Tuesday night at 8. Um, so I think it's really about what we can do. I'm working out in the annual report. You're welcome to. I can always put a link in. Send you a link. I've put it in some of these emails already. All these newsletters, and I think we have to come together and then think about ways that we can get more of the message out and educate people. And I think our next series should be really focused on our basic need, which is our housing and development, and what's our policies. Um, you guys, Alex, you guys do a lot with the HCC and WESNA. I'm happy to be associated with you guys. And I'm happy to have your help with the council. You've helped me a great deal, Alex. Um, any other thoughts on your end about what you're doing, HCC? You want to let us in on what's on the plan, on the horizon?
Well, I mostly Pete is here, so I'll be really
Oh, yeah.
judicious with what I say. But no, I think HCC for the most part is like a clone of Housing Justice for All. So I mean, they've kind of heard this from me, but I mean, certain things they find a little bit too niche or fringe, like the end apartment warehousing. I mean, they support it like nominally, but they don't really go to meetings and stuff. Except Pete. Pete does go to meetings. But like, I just want to say real quick that in this building, there's a lot of empty apartments, and what the landlord is now doing is moving in employees of the management company that they hired. They're moving them in. Like 3 of them already live here. So what I think is happening is because HSTPA changed the law from 15% to convert a rental building into a condo or co-op. It used to be 15%, really easy to do. And now after 2019, it became 51%, and landlords hate it because it's much harder. So now they're going to move in cronies and those cronies are always going to vote in alignment with what the landlord wants. So that's one of the things about and warehousing, nothing to do with HCC, but so far that coalition has focused on physical problems of warehousing, like pigeon poop and all this kind of stuff. But we're also going to start to look at the non-physical dangers, such as stuffing apartments with cronies so that they'll vote with the landlord and convert rentals into condominiums.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anybody else have any ideas? So speaking to that, Alex, you feel like I'm sure you feel like if they change the condos, would that allow? Of course, the cost will go up. I mean,
Yeah, well, they're supposed to offer this thing called a non-eviction plan for the people who don't want to participate, but just the principle of stuffing the empty apartments with, it's almost like ballot stuffing, if you want like a sort of analogy, like, because it's like organically you would have people voting for their best interests, but if you have a landlord that's stuffing empty apartments with cronies that are going to vote his way, I should say their way, because it's a group, it's a corporation that owns this building, then it's kind of like, well, then you're getting a corrupted voting process. So, all these people were